Hey guys, today we're jumping to chapter 10. So we have finished chapter 8. We'll come back and review it as needed, but we're skipping chapter 9 and we're going straight to chapter 10, which is areas and perimeters. It's a pretty short chapter, and we're combining 10.1 and 10.2 in the same day and lesson. So there'll be two different videos. Make sure to watch both. The first concept is areas of parallelograms and triangles, so hopefully stuff that is familiar, and if not, it's formulas and should be pretty easy to pick up. So let's get started. So we're going to start with areas of triangles because that's hopefully something that you've seen before. The area of a triangle is 1/2 the product, multiplication, of the base and its corresponding height. So we've got base and we've got height. Like the parallelogram, base can be any side, but height is the length of the altitude drawn from the given base. Remember, altitude is vertex and perpendicular. So altitude is both perpendicular and vertex. And you can orient your triangle any side. I could move this guy around if I wanted to, and so base was straight up and down or more like a hypotenuse looking thing. But if I can, I like to have it on its side, on its bottom where B is the base. I have labeled H as my height, so it goes from the vertex of X and it makes a right angle with the other side B. So that's why that is labeled my H. It is not another side. It is not anything else. It is just the height, the distance from the top to the other side. All right, so area of a triangle should be something we know. We know this. If a triangle has an area of A square units, a base of B units, and corresponding height of H units, then area equals 1/2 base times height. Remember that your units is always units squared. Area is always units squared. All right, so that was a nice little refresher. I'm going to label this height before we move on. Height or altitude, whatever floats your boat. Okay, areas of parallelograms. Remember, a parallelogram is a shape that has both sets of sides are parallel to each other, so those guys are parallel. There's a ton of different properties, and we'll kind of be reminded of them as we go and as we answer some questions, but by definition, a parallelogram has two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Any of these sides can be the base, so it can be AD and BC, or it can be AB and DC. It just depends on what else is given to you. The other thing that's given to you that kind of depends on all of this is the height of the parallelogram. That's your perpendicular distance, or like the altitude from one of the vertexes to the opposite side, and it's a perpendicular. It makes a 90-degree angle between that vertex's line that comes down and then the opposite side. The area of the parallelogram is the product of the base and the height, so I did another little X for multiplication. You're multiplying those two together. This is the same thing as a rectangle, so it's the same formula as a rectangle. So if a parallelogram has an area of A square units, a base of B units, and a height of H units, then your formula is A equals B times H, which again is units squared. What we've got going on over here is it looks like my base in this case is that DC distance, and then my H, my height, which again I'm going to label height over here, is from A to the other side. It is perpendicular to DC. It is not the length of AD or BC. It's something totally different by itself. So if that is not given to us, we're going to have to find it, and we'll have to get a little creative with that. Okay? Any questions? Moving on. Okay, we have 4 examples. So I've got 2 here and I've got 2 there. We're finding the perimeter and the area for each triangle or parallelogram, and it says express each answered as simplified radicals. Does that mean that decimals are okay? The answer is no, decimals are not okay. I don't want a decimal. Give me simplified radicals, okay? Or a fraction. I like fractions, we know that. Okay, so perimeter and area. Since there are 2 things to find, it kind of doesn't matter which order you find them in. So in my first shape, it's a parallelogram. Why, you ask? I've got 4 sides, not 3, so that's my first step into knowing it's a parallelogram, and those are my only 2 options, parallelogram or triangle. And what I'm probably going to do first is the perimeter, because I think perimeter is going to be easier to find. I have, these sides are both congruent to each other because I've got the little congruent mark, so I'm going to mark those both 15. And then since I know it's a parallelogram, these 2 sides are also congruent. That's a property of parallelograms that I didn't review on the last slide, but are things that we should already know and remember. Remember that perimeter is equal to the sum of all of the sides. So it's like 15 plus 15 plus 30 plus 30. Now that's a lot, right? I don't want to write that out all the time. We could also write instead 2 times 15 plus 2 times 30. That's cool. Or another way you could even write it is 2 times 15 plus 30. Whatever floats your boat, it works the same way. 15 plus 30 is 45. 2 times 45 is going to be 90. So my perimeter is 90, and don't forget a units. This guy is in feet. Perimeter is feet by itself. It's not feet squared or feet cubed, it's just feet. Okay, now I have to do area. So if I'm going to do area, I need to figure out what my height is. If I need to figure out what that height is, I have to find out what that orange line is. So I'm actually going to go back to our chapter 8, and we're going to do a little right triangles thing. It's a terrible right triangle, but just deal with me. I've got a little right triangle. I know what angle measure this is. It's 45. If I have a parallelogram, opposite angles are congruent. We learned that back in, I don't even know what chapter anymore. That's 45 degrees. I can't fit it on the inside, so it's going to go on the outside. And then I know my hypotenuse is 15. So what do I do to go from my hypotenuse to the other leg? Yep, I divide by root 2. So 15 divided by root 2 is going to be 15 root 2 over 2. If you can't rationalize it that fast, then we got to work on that. But that's my height now. So that's my height. And so in order to find area, area is base times height. Well, we know base is 30, and we know height is 15 root 2 over 2. So I can solve that pretty easily. You can just plug it in your calculator, but I'm just going to simplify. I know 30 and 15 both have a common factor of 2, or 30 and 2 both have a common factor of 2, so I'm left with 15. So I've got 15 times 15, which is 225 radical 2. Feet squared, because I got to put units, and this is what I'm talking about where I do not want a decimal. I don't want you to go in your calculator and write 225 times radical 2 and give me a number. This is the best answer. All right. Now I'm going to jump over to my other shape. I've got this triangle. Now you see that I've got this kind of a dotted line over on the right side. That's showing me other lengths of my triangle. That's not my full triangle. So I'm going to use those guys to help me find the height, and then I'm going to use the height to help me find the other side. Do you know what kind of triangle this is? Yep, it's a right triangle. Since I've got a perpendicular on the other side, I've got a perpendicular on this side. So that's a 90-degree angle right there. So since I've got a 90-degree angle, I can just Pythagorean theorem this in order to find the missing height. So I'm going to do 3 squared plus, we'll just call it x squared, equals 5 squared. 3 squared is 9, 5 squared is 25, x squared equals 16, x equals 4. Again, I swear I'm trying to write nice. Spring break must have got me. Okay, so my height, my x is 4. So this little bit right there is 4. Okay, that's one of my sides. I'm going to do perimeter because I think that's easy, so I'm going to find the other missing side. So in order to find this hypotenuse side, I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem again, but this time this is my c value. This is the value on the other side of my equation. So I'm going to go 15 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. 15 squared is 225, 4 squared is 16, c squared. 225 plus 16 is going to be 241. And that's actually a really ugly number, and we can't do anything else. Let's just leave it as 241. There's no factor tree I can make with that. So if I'm going to do perimeter, I'm going to say perimeter is going to equal all the sides added up. 15 plus 3 plus root 241. Yeah, that's a number. That's an okay number. I cannot combine all three of those. I can only combine those two. So that gives me 18 plus root 241. And that's my best answer. So perimeter is that centimeters. Okay, if I'm going to do area, then I need to do 1/2 base times height because this is a triangle. So area equals 1/2 base times height. Base is 15. Height is 4. I'll do it down here. Area equals 1/2 15 times 4. If you want to put all of these over 1, that works. You don't multiply 2 on top and bottom, it's just on bottom, the end. So 2 and 4 actually have a common factor of 2, so I'm left with 2, and so area equals 30 centimeters squared. Cool? Questions? Let me know. Got 2 more to do. All right, I've got another triangle, I've got another parallelogram. If you want, pause this, see where you're at, check yourself. All right. Welcome back. We're going to work on this, or if you didn't leave, thank you for being here. We've got a little triangle. I've got the cutout again on the right, and I have to figure out what this length is right here in order to do anything else. So if I want to find that length right there, I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem, or you can notice something special, but I'll do Pythagorean theorem just to prove a point. Okay, so I've got 9 squared, I'm so sorry. 9 squared plus 9 squared equals c squared. 81 plus 81 equals c squared. That becomes 162 equals c squared. And when you square root that, that actually factor trees down to be 9 root 2. Now if you're like, duh, Miss White, we knew that. Why did you know that? Well, since it's an isosceles right triangle, I've got a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And so in order to go from the leg to the hypotenuse, you multiply by root 2. So I could have even not done any of that work and known that that distance right there was 9 root 2. Now, in order to get this longer side right here, you actually have to look at the entire triangle, this big yellow triangle shape. That means that I'm going to have to do Pythagorean theorem of 9 squared plus, what's 9 plus 13? 22. 22 squared equals c squared. 81 plus 22 squared is 484 equals c squared. 81 plus 484 is 565. And then when you square root that, that's as simple as it gets. Perimeter is going to be all the sides added up, 13 plus 9 root 2 plus root 565. And can you simplify that? No, that's my easiest, simplest answer. Area was actually probably the easier one. 1/2 base, 13, times height, 9. You actually can't simplify this, so I would rather you leave it as the most simple answer. Do 13 times 9, which is 117 over 2 centimeters. That's the best answer, I think. All right, now we've got our last parallelogram. It's technically what specific type of parallelogram? A rhombus. Very good. So a rhombus means that we've got all 4 sides are the same, 24, 24, 24. Perimeter equals 4 times 24. Perimeter equals 96 inches. Okay, I'm going to finish this in the next video because I'm running, I'm running out of space. Try the rest. Catch me in the next video. Bye.